everybody. This is Greensburg Muse. I'm sitting here with Joseph Disaster. I have to say, too, I have a very noisy neighbor who's might be making some noise in the background, so I apologize in advance for that. But like Jack Black says, rock ain't about getting an A. So I'm back with Joseph Disaster, also known as Death Cannot Find Me. It's been several years since our last confab, and he has released much more material since then, and we shall be discussing. So, hello, Joseph. It's good to see you back again.
Oh, thanks for having me.
So, by your own admission, you sort of dropped off the societal grid for a while. Why did you decide to do that?
I was going through some emotional stuff, which is what a lot of the one album turned out to be about. Just some relationship stuff from somebody that was like, without getting too far down that road, like just really important to me, that is kind of one of those people that always comes back and you are glad they're back, and then they kind of like set off an atom bomb and then they run away, and then they come back and they do it again. And so after several years of distance, like that happened again. And but on the broader spectrum, people's reactions to it, it kind of made me start second guessing people and who were real friends and who weren't. And basically I was just like, okay, I don't want to deal. I kind of am going to Henry David Thoreau myself basically right now, and just kind of go into like my own little place, and the people that want to be there, and they'll find a way to be there. The ones that aren't will obviously just fade away because they're not going to make attempts.
Right.
And that's pretty much what happened.
Okay. So do your recent songs sort of reflect that state of mind, things you're going through?
Well, there's two albums that I'm putting out, and the album Ghosts is 100% all about that. Like it's called Ghosts because it's about the things that haunt us and haunt me and stuff like that. And so like it wasn't even intentionally written. It was, I just started recording and I did this one song, and it was the Banshee, and I was like, oh, the song, I love the song. Then
I like that song.
pick up another song. I'm like, oh, I got this other song I'm going to do, and it had the word ghost in it. And then I happened to do another one, and it had, I don't remember if it had the word ghost or it had a different word, like a different reference to a ghost. And I started to realize, like, even though I wasn't intentionally writing these songs that way, every song that came out had to do with ghosts or specters or haunting or wraiths or something like that. Was like, and I was like, this album is literally theming itself, and I'm not even doing it on purpose. So it was like, originally it was supposed to be all on the same album, and then I was like, this is such a separate thing that it has to be two different entities. So.
Oh, that's cool. So you're there's that one, and then there's another one. Let's see what it was. What was the other one you did with Ghosts? It was Ghosts, and then there was another one.
I'm trying to remember which ones I sent you. I sent you Banshee, or the other album, you mean?
Yeah, the other album. Yeah.
Oh, the other album is Die Alone.
Yeah. So is that what's that? What's happening with that?
Die Alone
Is that before Ghost or after?
Technically, it's before. I mean, they were kind of like both being co-written, but technically it's before, because it was, a lot of the music there was already kind of pre-written, or I was working on it for a bit, and then when I got other songs that didn't fit into Ghost, I would kind of just tag them onto there. But Die Alone was like a mix of some of my older sound and then kind of like newer stuff where I wasn't trying to specifically sound that way, but I was like just conveying that emotion, and that's what the song was going to sound like. So like some songs will be like, real mellow or something. There's actually a spoken word that's going to be on there that has like an ambient kind of string quartet electronic background that I recorded, and then I did the spoken word over it. Like, it's just, it was about just being real and raw, which I always was that, but it was more so because I faced a lot more stuff in those songs where I just was blunt, where instead of being just poetic and blunt, like you have to like look at that and be, what does that really mean? It was just kind of like, this is what it means. Like it was kind of more raw stuff. So.
All right. So we're gonna discuss some songs from some of these. The first one you sent me was Crimson Tiger Stripes. So what's going on with this song? What's it about?
Crimson Tiger Stripes.
That's from Die Alone, right?
Yeah, from Die Alone. Okay. And that's actually the one I was kind of thinking about when I was just speaking there a minute ago about how the rawness and like everything. And growing up, I was pretty, and even now sometimes today, to be honest, like I have problems with anxiety, depression, and stuff like that, and I've had it like my whole life. And I go into like pretty severe depressions, like shut down completely depressions, not just like bipolar back and forth or something.
You go
like I
into
just
the black pit.
Yeah, I just go into the black pit.
Yeah.
And so I sometimes go through periods of self-destruction and stuff, and can be suicidal and stuff. And when I was younger, as are most people when they're younger and they're going through depression for the first time, it's a lot easier to fall into that because you're dealing with all this teen angst and not understanding things, and then that triggers it more, and then it just makes you want to give up. And so, I used to be like a cutter, and I would like hurt myself in some way. And like you probably can't even see them in the light, but there's little, white scars up and down my arm here from razor blades.
Sure.
And one time I had done most of those at one time, and there was just all these red, cuts.
Yeah, I've known so many people that have done that.
Yeah, and it was I was just thinking about it, and this was like years upon years ago. This was maybe like, I don't even know, to be honest, actually. It was like maybe early 2000s or something like that had happened. And I was at work, and I looked at my arm, and I was just like, I was kind of like, at that point, regretful. Like, this is stupid. What did I do this for? This was just me being upset and just flipping out and not being able to handle it. And now I'm sitting here at work trying to hide my arm from people, and it's like summer, and I'm the only one wearing a sweater, so nobody asks me, that type of thing. Yeah. And I like looked at it, and I was like, they're like crimson tiger stripes because they're just lined up.
Makes sense.
And so then I had wrote a song way back then, but it wasn't that song that is on this album at all. But that line always stuck out in my head, just the crimson tiger stripes thing. So it would have been, I think, last year when I was working on that album, I sat down one day and just picked up the guitar and started playing. And it was literally like, recently I've had a lot of songs that I just literally pick up the guitar and start playing and just sing them, and that's them. It's not like,
you just channel it out.
Yeah, it just comes out like 100%. It's not like, okay, here's 4 lines and now I spend the next 4 to 6 months trying to perfect this song. It's literally like I pick up that thing and just start singing off the top of my head, and it just comes out. And it's kind of been really weird for me. Like, it's not even like, oh yeah, I'm getting really good. It's actually like strange, like, why did this come out this well? And all the words are structured exactly how I'd want them. Yeah, it's something creepy but cool. Like, I don't know. Right. But it was really this raw song that talked about, it was literally just straight up turning and facing my depression, facing it, and just not just putting it in every once in a while, like, I have a broken heart, or in Weights and Lengths, I was born with a broken heart, never worked right from the start. And that was a dual meaning because I have heart problems, but because of my depression and stuff like that. But this was actually just like straight up facing it and just actually calling out like everything I was going through and why I was going through it. And then the chorus of that song is saying, if you find a way out of here, never come back. If you walk your way out of hell, never come back. It's
Right.
listening to these things saying never come back. And normally in a song, like, that's like a negative thing, get out, never come back, that type of thing.
Like in a relationship thing, yeah.
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 But this was like I never viewed my music as negative. I always viewed it as relating and just being honest.
Mhm.
But there's a lot of people that always tell me, like, your music's really negative, it's really dark, it's really depressing.
Mm.
But I've had a lot of people, say the opposite. Your music helped me because I got that you understood.
Oh, absolutely. I get exactly what you're doing.
And this album, or several songs on these albums were very odd because it was one of the first times that I was putting stuff that wasn't forced to be somewhat positive, but it was. So I would like be point blank, like in that song, about this is my depression, this is what this means, this is what I faced, I'm not hiding from it. But then saying, like, if you're going through this too, and if you find a way out of here, because we're not guaranteed that,
Right.
and it's okay if you don't, just try to function like I'm trying.
Yeah.
But if you do, don't come back. Do everything you can not to come back to that. That's really what,
That's
And
pretty straightforward.
there was there were still like little poetic things. Obviously, like Crimson Tiger Stripes isn't, but that line is, Crimson Tiger Stripes, endless sleepless nights. These are road maps of where I've been. Moonlight on my hands is actually, I have this scar right here that looks like a crescent moon.
Oh, yeah.
That was, I burnt myself with a car cigarette lighter.
Oh, shit.
That's how it healed. It was, another wound from back in the
Unintentional
day.
tattoo?
Yeah. But it was another self-destructive thing from back in the day.
Yeah.
And I was actually kind of glad it stayed there because it was a reminder of me
Mhm.
not to do something that's stupid again. Like, I would look at it and be like, why'd you do that,
Yeah.
But that's what the Moonlight on my hands reference was to,
Oh, okay.
But then there were like, a lot of stuff like maybe the liquor is a dowsing rod to find my pain and pull or draw it out.
Mm.
It was just straight up talking about how I've used alcohol to try to numb things.
Mm.
It's not making an excuse for it. It's just saying,
That's what it is.
and it was just like I said, turning and facing that demon just like outright.
Well, okay. So where did you record this? Because it sounds like it has a little echo on it on the recording, and really gives it sort of a haunting, intense feel. And with the lyrics, it really packs a punch. Where did you record that
I recorded all of it at my house.
Did you?
The Banshee was actually recorded on my porch. Like, it was outside.
at? Oh, wow.
That's why the crickets that you hear in the recording are actual crickets. They're not.
I was gonna ask you about that. The crickets in the beginning. That's really good. It really sets the mood. It ended off with the crickets too. That was really brilliant. Did you come up with that? For Banshee?
It was, I went out and I did the same thing where I picked it up, the guitar, just went out and was playing. Wrote the song 100% right there on the porch.
Wow.
And then I was like, okay, I need to record this right now because it was coming out so raw, and I was like, I'm not
Yeah.
going to get the same,
Or to capture that. Yeah.
feeling and stuff. Normally with a song, if I write something, I'll wait a couple days, sometimes weeks, sometimes even months before I record it because I want to make sure I'm getting all the chord changes right and stuff. But every once in a while, like, and I have some of my old songs are like that too. Like, it'll just, if it comes out like that, I'm like, okay, this has to happen now. It's not an option.
Mhm.
I know I'm gonna mess it up, and I'm never gonna be able to like
You're
catch
giving
that.
birth.
Yeah, I'm not gonna catch the lightning in the bottle. Like, again, it has to be
Your
caught.
water broke and you're giving
Yeah.
birth. Yeah.
And so yeah, I was like, okay, I got to record this now. So I went out and hooked up my recorder and stuff, set it up, and I'm sitting there, and it's like, it was a really kind of nice night, but it was real creepy. Like, I live in the middle of nowhere, so there's no unnatural light. It's just like when lights go out,
Oh, that'd
like
be
it's
great.
like dark.
God, love that.
And so, like, I'm sitting there on the porch, and the only way I could get the recorder, because of the size of the cord and the positioning of my porch, was I had to, like, face my house So I had my back to like really dark, creepy woods and stuff like that, and I was kind of like freaking out because it actually was this really kind of eerie
Yeah.
night. So I'm trying to record, and then the even worse part to it as I'm trying to record, I have a motion sensor light, and it just keeps going off, and so I just keep being in like just pitch black in the middle of nowhere, like, and I'm like, honestly, kind of slightly horrified while I'm singing this song.
Yeah.
So I finished playing it, and I think I had messed up like 2 or 3 times or something. So every time I'm like, okay, this is cool. I'm gonna get off this porch, and I don't have to be freaked out anymore. Blow a line or I blow a chord, and I'm like, no, 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 no. I'm gonna start over, and I'm like, I'm to the point where I'm like, okay, I don't want to record this now. I don't want to do it, but then I'm like, I have to, and so finally I got it out, and so then I get up, and I'm walking in the house, and I look over in the field by my house, and there's this like big shadow, like a big, shadow standing in the middle of this field. And I'm like looking, and I'm like staring at it, and I go, I see you, and it just stands there, and I'm just like, hello, and it's just standing there, and I kind of like looking, and then I just like walked in the house and closed the door, and I'm sitting there thinking like, was that like one of the neighbors' horses? But they usually don't leave them out at night in the field. They have a barn that they put it in, and this was like person size, like 6 foot,
Yeah.
and so I'm like, I don't know what that was really weird.
Wow.
And so then I was telling this girl that I was friends with online about it, because she was really, even though we didn't talk very much and weren't really close friends, she was really into old folklore, like banshees and kelpies and will-o-wisps and stuff like that. So I'm telling her the story about the song, and told her what happened there, and she just goes, "Oh my God, the banshee heard your serenade and came to see you." And I was like, "Okay, that is a really cool story, but completely horrifying."
Yeah.
Is what just happened.
Wow.
So it just added this weird little element, like, you know what I mean? It could have just been a horse, it could have been a deer that was running through the
Yeah,
field
but
and stuff,
still,
but it just made
the
it really
timing of that.
creepy. And then on that same album, another thing that you reminded me of was on what was the other song I sent you? Kiss You on Armageddon,
Kiss on the Apocalypse.
or Kiss, yeah, on the Apocalypse.
Yeah.
At the end of that song, after I recorded it, I was listening, and that one I just did in my room, and I was sitting there, and I'm listening back, and I keep hitting, rewind, play. I'm really getting into it. Like, man, I really like this song, and I'm listening about the third or fourth time through, and I hear this weird little noise right at the end, and I'm like, what is that noise? And I'm cranking it up, and I'm listening, rewind, and doing the whole like rewind, play, and listening. And it dawned on me, like, right at the end, there was a screech owl that must have like landed on the roof right outside my window,
Wow.
and happened to like do a call right at the end, right when I was like fading out, and you hear it's like real subtle,
Wow.
but it wasn't planned, it wasn't like put in there electronically, it was just a screech owl that just happened. So it made it really kind of weird because and cool because not only the crickets fall in the line,
Yeah.
but the screech owl added.
And that was on
This-
Banshee, or was that on Kiss You on the Apocalypse?
That was Kiss You on the Apocalypse.
Oh, okay.
On that one, yeah, and that was
The
I was
screech owl was
inside,
on
and
that
it just
one,
happened
yeah.
to be close enough outside that
Wow.
it picked it up. And,
Nature's like wanting to get in on your recording.
yeah.
Wow. That's so. What inspired you for Banshee? I mean, to write that.
Banshee is literally.
That's on the Ghost album, right?
Yeah, that's on the Ghost album. Banshee's literally about that girl the relationship thing I was talking about.
Okay.
It was a dual meaning song of completely 100% talking about me and my relationship with her, and who she was and who I was and stuff like that. But then it was also just telling it into like a story form of a guy that falls in love with a banshee, and then she can only come, to see him during the night, and she has to be gone during the day, and he's like, he's the one that's really the ghost, because like he's fading away because of like how he can't be with this person and stuff like that. So,
So, for those of you who don't know what a banshee is, describe a banshee.
it's like an Irish ghost or spectral being that usually is seen as a bad thing. Sometimes there's some stories of them being good, but for the most part, it's a bad
like
thing.
portend death or something.
Yeah, it's like a harbinger of death or
Right.
something, like somebody was gonna die, and the banshee has like a well, like a singing type well in a way, like a call that people would hear. And actually, oddly enough, even though that's not on the Ghost album, but like some people attribute banshees to things like screech owls and stuff like that. So it was
That's
kind
right,
of, even though it's a different album, like it was kind of odd that the screech owl shows up and
Wow.
makes an appearance. So.
So, well, speaking of the song "Kissed You on the Apocalypse," it's a great play on words too. I really like that. This is off Die Alone, right?
Yeah.
It's sort of it's sort of camp, but at the same time really meaningful. I can hear it being played like on The Walking Dead. How did this come about?
There was a girl I was friends with that was one of my best friends, but I've never met her. Like, I only met online. I talked her through some of the worst times in her life and talked her out of drug addiction, talked her out of all the stuff like over the phone. And anyway, she would always say like, I want to come up and play music with you sometime.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, well, I'll come up with some songs. And one day I was just sitting there just trying to think of a song that would be cool to like play. And those lyrics started popping in my head, and I started thinking like, okay, what's this song about though? Because it's like you said, like it actually makes me kind of laugh because it's like really kind of, I don't know, like campy, like over the top. I kissed you on the apocalypse, I grabbed you by the Armageddon, like it's just like almost corny. But then I like wanted to make it have way more meaning than something that was stupid, And so I started thinking, well, what this is about is it's about how in a relationship, everybody fights in relationships. No matter how perfect the relationship is, you're going to get into an argument. It might be years down the road, it might be months, it might be whatever, but it's going to happen. It might be a big thing, it might be a small thing, people argue different. But you always, even if you think, okay, I found the perfect person, when you're having these arguments, you are just so fed up that you're just like, I'm done, And so what this song was about was there was a nuclear war, and there's only one man and one woman, or it's not even set to that. It could be two men or two women. I'm not trying to put it in a box, but just two people left in the entire world. And so obviously they get into this relationship because there's no other people left and we need each other. And then they start, that bickering process basically starts happening where they start to feel, because now they can't even like go talk to anybody else. There's just them.
That's it.
And how they're saying like in the lines, there's so many fish in the ocean. Like when people say there's plenty of fish, like I can go find someone else. There's so many fish in the ocean, but there's no ocean left to see, is because there was a nuclear war and there's no. And so it's really actually the deeper meaning is just like those faults always come, and that's not something to just give up on people over. Like if something's actually serious, that's one thing, but if it's something small, it's not. You shouldn't look at it as that. Like work your way through it, and it's kind of like that's what kind of added to the seriousness, but the campiness of it was like it's parodying that if there were two people left on the earth, they're gonna also be having stupid fights about like, you left the firewood out in the rain or something like that. You're gonna sit there and like bicker. It was like a fun little play on things, but it was like a serious
at the same time. Yeah, that's cool.
thing too.
So on the recording, I noticed you had some violin-sounding background music, which sounded really cool and gave it sort of an intense, foreboding feel to it too. Was that, did you use like on a synthesizer, or was that a?
I do have a synthesizer, but that wasn't a synthesizer. That is actually a guitar.
Oh,
That's electric guitar.
it sounded really violinish.
Well, it's electric
Yeah.
guitar through ran through a volume pedal that then runs through an electro harmonics memory man, which is it's a delay echo pedal, and then through a overdrive pedal. And so what that does is I can strum the chord and then use the volume pedal with my foot to do volume swells, and because of the delay, it just like kind of carries over and then just builds.
Okay.
Like a normal delay would be like you'd hit it and then it would happen after.
Oh.
Because I hit it and then build up the volume swell, it's triggering right at that
Oh.
moment, and it just keeps.
That's a really cool effect. That sounded really cool. Okay, so the Beast is another one off of Ghosts. This is another one that has a sort of a walking through a dark tunnel or going down a lonely road at night sort
Mhm.
of intensity to it. It's very haunting and disturbing. What's this one about?
The Beast. Well, the oddest story about why the Beast, how that was written, was that I was at one of Steve Hawk's shows. It was like the Fall Festival or whatever in Scottsdale,
Okay.
and I'm like sitting in the audience and everything, and clapping for him and supporting him and everything.
Mm.
He sung. It was an old song that he doesn't play very much, but it doesn't sound anything like that. The lyrics aren't anything like that. He just started singing it, and out of nowhere, like those lyrics started coming to me while he was singing a completely different song. And so I was sitting there in the audience on my cell phone typing all these lyrics, and I wrote the whole song sitting in the audience. And then I went home and was like, okay, now I gotta come up with chords.
Yeah.
So I sat down and started finger picking something out, and then came up with this, like, what for me, because I'm not really, I can put together songs that sound good, but I'm not really the best guitarist in the world.
Okay.
I kind of trick everybody into believing that I am.
Whatever works.
But it was just a really odd and kind of complex chord progression for me. I put in a couple chords I don't normally use after one another, and it was kind of like very fluid to where like I couldn't, because it was finger picked in that certain way and the chord changes were like I couldn't mess up without it being noticed. Like, so when I actually recorded that song, I don't know how many takes I did because I messed up so many times that it was noticeable, like trying to get it, down and stuff. But it was kind of the same, facing the depression thing, but it was also talking about the old So Death Cannot Find Me stuff, and still current, but that of like missing my kids, like where it says ghosts come in many forms, I died so long ago, was about, that line's about my when things fell apart with my family and I had to move far away from my kids. Like I always say, like that's when I died, was then. Like I've been dead since, and so it was kind of just the Beast is talking about depression, it's talking about those things that consume you, and so it's why in the main part it says sometimes you eat the beast, sometimes the beast eats you. Like sometimes you win and sometimes you don't. Like,
right. Very true.
so.
Well, speaking of, you said you don't think you're that great of a guitar player, but I really like the guitar picking on here. I mean, that was.
Thank you.
I don't care how many takes you had to do. It sounds great. It gives it an almost sort of a tender feel, but sort of a menacing undertone at the same time. Was that intentional, or was that just how it came out?
It was kind of a little bit of both. Like it was, everything is always like how it comes out with me, even when I just talk. Like I do a lot of like internal thinking about stuff like all the time. So a lot of times when I'll say something, a lot of people like will be, maybe I say something like where I'm upset with somebody and I say something like offensive to them or something. And then maybe we'll talk it out later, but like their initial reaction is like this shocked thing, not because specifically like, okay, you said something like
Yeah.
that was kind of rude or something. It's usually because they'll usually come forward later when we're talking out and say like, it kind of took me off guard because what you said was completely true and I didn't have a way to argue against it. And it's not because was being cocky like I'm right type thing. It's just because I do a lot of internal thinking all the time, and I'm not going to waste my time saying something if I believe it's not true or even questionable. And I'm not just saying that in like a negative sense like that, but if I'm just making somebody asks me like a political statement or something like this, like I'm going to make sure I have it thought out. Or if I am talking about it without thinking out, I'm audibly doing the thinking where I'm saying, okay, well this is this way, but also people should think this, and
Yeah.
So yeah, the short answer is, yeah, it was the way it came out, but I think the part that was intentional wasn't like, it wasn't like I was like, okay, I have to do this way to make it sound this way. It was just the drive or the emotion behind it made it sound that way.
Okay.
So that's kind of the, like, kind of I said, like, not the best guitarist thing is like, I'm kind of not good at being like, okay, these chords make something sound this way and these chords make it sound this way. I'll just like sit down and be like, okay, I don't like the way that chord sounds there until I find something that sounds like it fits that song.
Okay.
But it just was because of that media that was inside of me, I guess you could say, medium rather,
Okay.
for art of it. That's how all the songs kind of came out.
Okay,
Yeah.
that kind of flow thing that you were talking about.
Yeah.
The ending lyric of that is "Ghosts come in many forms." That's a really cool lyric that I think everybody could probably take their own way. But what did you mean by that?
It was kind of like, I was referring to myself, like I said in the one part. I mean, it wasn't only like it was referring to everybody. Like it was you were right by picking that up. It was a very broad spectrum. But for me, it was referring to myself and saying like how, you can see me here, but like I said, I feel like I died a long time ago. Like, but at the same time, it kind of reflected on like people like Robin Williams or different comedians that the ones that are with us or ones that aren't, the ones that have like talked about how their dark side, like they hit it through this or that. And so like a lot of people, when I talk to people about the stuff that I've went through, or like my growing up and how that wasn't the most positive thing ever and stuff like that, they're kind of a little off guard about it because they're just like, I didn't think that's the kind of person you were or what you had went through, because you don't really show that. And they say, well, we'll see you sometimes and you'll obviously be down, but we just think, maybe something happened that day. We don't realize there's a snowball of stuff.
Yeah.
But it, on a broader spectrum too, it's just like how not only things affect people, but people affect people, and like you can be not really there because of this reason or that reason, or this person can be a ghost in your life, like because you maybe there was a falling out you had with somebody and now you haven't seen them in this long or something, and so in a way they're a ghost, like they're not there even though they could be. That's why it was just a many forms thing. Like there's a lot of people just think it's the obvious definition of a ghost, when it's actually a deeper thing.
Right. Well, I can really relate to a lot of your stuff. I think if you've experienced a certain amount of darkness, you have an easier time understanding your stuff sometimes than somebody who's just skimming across the surface. And I think that's true with a lot of people that listen to your music. Like you said, they get it or they don't sometimes. But I know your stuff is really visual. I can kind of, it's very descriptive and visual. Does that come naturally to you? Are
Yeah,
you
I don't.
surprised to hear that? Do you think of your stuff as visual?
I guess I kind of, I do, but I just never realized other people pick it up. I guess that's what I was. I mean,
Could
you
just
kind of.
be me too.
I just realized when you said it that I kind of made a face where I was a bit surprised, but it's.
I mean,
just.
I get visual from it. It might just be me, but it seems like really visual to me. I can see things when I'm listening to your music and kind of go on a trip with you, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Well, I myself see it visually, but it's like I said, I never realized other people pick up on that. I think a lot of